We are now live.
What's the
For
agenda
those,
today?
the agenda. Um, the agenda today is very short, but also potentially very long. Um, a bunch of us have been working on various intersecting areas in the Ehcache concurrent methods recently, and it's caused a sort of we've Clifford in particular and I have noticed the same issue coming from two different directions, and it's a problem with the concurrent methods. Um, which relates to what is meant by cache through and how 107 operates and the cache writer interfaces used by 107 and so on and so forth. So we're going to attempt to have a discussion. We're a bit down on numbers today. Louis is ill and Alex is in India and probably asleep, unless he's simultaneously trying to create a competing hangout on there and hasn't told anyone, but that'll be his problem, not mine. Let me try and elucidate what the problem is, and then we can see if we can figure out if there's a sensible way around it, or what the most sensible contract is, and this might get a bit sort of rambling. I apologize. If it gets rambling, you can always stop watching, except for the three other people in this room, in which case you have to sit through it to the bitter end. So the Java doc for 107's putIfAbsent reads as the following. Atomically associates the specified key with the given value if it is not already associated with a value. This is equivalent to, if not, cache.contains key. I could probably share this actually, and then you can probably see it. Let me move my monitors around so that you guys can actually see what I want you to see. And then refine the browser window. Cool. Sorry, you're going to have to look at the Java doc through the source. I assume that's legible. So it's equivalent to this sort of, if not cache.contains key, cache.put key value, return true, else return false. Except that the action is performed atomically. And then there's this statement, key with keys, blah, 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 blah. C, cache writer, hashtag, right. Now, the naive way of reading this, well, it's not naive. The only way you can explicitly read this in my book is that you do exactly what the pseudocode says. You call exactly that. The problem is that contains key is not something that, well, I guess the whole question boils down to what's the semantics of contains key? If I call contains key on a cache with a cache loader and the key is not in the cache, do you call the loader?
My understanding is no, you don't.
Right, that's what specs is. Determines if the cache contains an entry for the specified key. Turns true if and only if this cache contains a mapping for a key such that key equals k. And it explicitly does not invoke the loader. But the problem is that means that the putIfAbsent, as it currently stands, has a very strange contract in that the predicate, the ifAbsent, is on the cache, but the put is performed on the key. So in that sense, it's partially a transparent caching proxy method on the system of record, and it partially isn't. And obviously reflexively obviously because of that, in Java's cache integration cache writer, the cache writer only has a single write method, which just writes an entry because there's no need to be able to do concurrent style operations on the cache. currently our cache writer has that method, which is the equivalent, but it also has this method, which is something approaching, well, is a CAS-like operation, or supposed to be implemented as a CAS-like operation on the system of record, i.e., map the key to the new value if it's currently mapped to the old value, with an old value of null being interpreted as this value should not be there. I.e., if you pass in an old value as null, it acts like putIfAbsent. And then if you go look at the way we've implemented putIfAbsent in Ehcache, sorry. It's done in a way such that it calls computIfAbsent, passing in a key and a mapping function. So the compute is only run if the key is absent from the store, i.e. from the cache, which maps to the contains key check in the 107 spec. But then the function doesn't just call write key value, it uses our CAS'ing write key null value. And if the write fails, this is actually it's actually a feature branch I'm working on, so it's subtly different to what you'll see if you look at trunk, but not in any significant way. If the write fails, i.e. the predicate matched there being no key on the cache, but subsequently when you went to go on the system of record, we found there was a key, i.e. the only reason there was no key in the cache was because we hadn't cached it, not because there is no key in the system of record, then we return null from the function. Which will force the thing to remove the key. Except of course in this case you're only going to actually end up calling this function if the key wasn't there in the first place. So it effectively acts as a no-op. The problem then becomes that when things get spat out, the computIfAbsent returns what was in the cache in the first place. And because we know the predicate passed, the thing that's in the cache is a null value. It's not there, which means in cache is null. And as you can see in my comment that I added to my branch, it's dubious. This we've hit in the system of record, i.e. it wasn't absent and therefore we didn't write, but we missed in the cache. The question is at that point, what do you return? And in a previous incarnation of this code, previous to a very recent set of changes by Tim Eck, that was merged by Louis, I believe, our putIfAbsent called the cache loader. It actually would ask the cache loader what's the correct thing for me to load into the cache at this point. And then you could act like the putIfAbsent never failed. I think, so that was a very long-winded explanation of what's going on. There are equivalent problems in some of the other methods. I think this is the one maybe where it's clearest. It's also the first one that I came across, and it's the one that I've looked at the most. Here's the thing. I think that the 107 contract is defensible in certain ways. I think that a full putIfAbsent that always uses, well, I think that a contract which assumes that the cache and the system of record are in sync and therefore uses the predicate, the presence of a value in the cache as a way of avoiding talking to the system of record. I think that's a valid optimization, because if you're doing cache through and your system of record and your cache are out of sync, you already have significant problems because your gets are all going to be wrong, or potentially some of them will be wrong. As long as you make sure that the return that you've got reflects reality. What we have at the moment doesn't make sense. So if I write out in pseudocode at the moment, what we currently have is something like this. cache.get key. Oops, sorry, I want to put in brackets there. So, and then if the cache value is null, then we go, oh, let's ask this record value. And then at the bottom, we just return cache value. That is effectively what we have right now. And the problem with this is that from a putIfAbsent point of view, it's kind of useless. Because you can't tell which branch of this if, whether this if was taken or not. Therefore, you can't tell whether the system of record was mutated by looking at just cache value. Or just, which is the return of the method, by just looking at the return of the method. From my point of view, I'll make a strong assertion that, so this is our current behavior as of the head of where we are. This is
we're missing one thing there. I think the cache itself gets updated as well. You're missing a put.
Oh yes, sorry. You're right. And crucially, it's the put there. There is no put here.
Right.
Not that it would matter if there was a put there if you didn't actually propagate that put out. The put there is kind of irrelevant because you could populate out on a subsequent get. It's the return value that's wrong, but you're right. Yes, cool. And then of course what 107 mandates is that, which I think is sensible. I mean, well, it's a reasonable contract. There is no ambiguity about what happened. If cache value is null, you know that you put to both the system record and the cache. If the cache value is not null, you know you didn't. There's no ambiguity like there is in the first version. And I also think that if you were to take this version, maybe I won't call it the ideal. It's the transparent proxy approach. I think that is defensible too. And obviously you can live with or without this. It actually doesn't matter. I think that the current behavior is weird. This is not weird, maybe not useful. And this, I think, is not weird and maybe more useful. Does anyone have any opinions about? Well, I guess there's two separate questions. Well, they're not separate. There's two questions and they are intertwined. One is, what do we want Ehcache 3 to do? And two is, how do you reconcile whatever you choose there with what 107 mandates? And obviously it's easy to choose to decide what you choose if you just decide to do what 107 does. And you're reconciling is simple.
My first question would be, does 107 explicitly forbids the transparent proxy method?
Yes. Well, depends what you call by. I don't know if the TCK will check it. My suspicion is no. But my understanding from the reading of the spec is it would be a little disingenuous to read the spec in that way. I don't think that's what they intend. I believe what they intend is I believe this is what I read the letter of the spec to say, and I think that's what they intend to. Because
Yeah, so the transparent proxy version would be an abused but still somewhat legal version of the spec.
No, because, well,
It depends on how you define the cache. Right? What image is it you're presenting?
yes, I guess, Ludovic, you're right. If under the assumption that the thing never gets out of sync, if the only time that the only time that these two differ in behavior, so the current behavior, the current thing we've got, and the 107 mandated behavior, they differ any time that you do a putIfAbsent on something that's not in the cache. These two, they differ any time the system of record and the cache get out of sync. But if they're perfectly in sync, you shouldn't see any problems. And yes, we've got is the argument again that well, the only way you could get out of sync here, if you were out of sync, you would be seeing so many other severe, well, not severe, but you'd be seeing so many other aberrant behaviors in the cache that you may not care or you may not notice.
I'm strongly in favor of the transparent proxy method, even if it's an abuse of the spec.
Yes.
Because it's safer. It's more useful. It will be more useful.
Yes, I believe you're right. In fact, I would suggest that if you wanted to go with the 107 mandated behavior, I think there's actually a fourth option here that's not on here, which I'm not saying we should do, but I think is more sensible than 107's, which is that you don't do that. And the putIfAbsent acts like it treats it like a transient value. Because I can see uses for this where you want to embed soft locks or something like that inside your cache that don't get persisted. This, to me, is just weird. The only thing... So the other problem here, well, if you want to go with this transparent proxy, there is a secondary issue. And it's something that I know when Alex watches this back, he'll probably be jumping up and down about something at this point. Probably because we've said many things that are wrong and that he doesn't agree with. But also, the question is, when we say system of record, it's not really system of record at this point. We know that this is writer. The question is, what is this? The old code treated it like that, effectively. Now, you could, if you wanted, even do away with this. If you wanted to be really strict, it should do that. Because even the transparent proxy version gating on the cache is, again, assuming that everything's in sync. Because if the cache gets out of sync, and the cache says there's something there, and the system of record says there isn't, then you'll get erroneous results, which you can do away with by just not using the cache. But at that point, you're making everyone pay a performance penalty when it doesn't. When in the common case, when everything's in sync, it won't have any functional change or won't cause any functional changes.
Yeah, and I think it should be up to the user to be aware of that. We're going to gate on the cache, as you said, because that's more performance, because that's why you use the cache.
Cool.
So if they are out of sync, either you don't care, so you don't use putIfAbsent, or you do care and
yeah, cool. Yeah, I mean, of course, the other thing is, yes, is in this scenario, if you want to get the version which is more correct because you're worried about consistency issues, you can just go straight to the system of record.
Or sync your cache.
And then invalidate the cache. So let me write out 3 different variants of this thing. Well, 2 different variants rather. So there's cache.getKey, cache.read.getKey, write.put, cache.put. The other alternative is to do
Does the writer presently have any fetch methods in it?
the writer. No, it doesn't.
Okay.
Well, not that fetch values. It has methods that fetch information, because so this doesn't fetch a value,
Right.
but it does fetch information. It's just the information is pretty minimal, so it'll tell you whether or not. That's why, for example, that's why at the moment you can't do it with just the writer, is because it won't tell you what was there.
What the current
It'll
value
tell you
was.
whether or not it matched. But in the case that in our case, when you emulate a putIfAbsent with this, you can't know what value it was that was there that prevented it, so you can't return it. And I remember, and this touches on two discussions that we've had. One is, I remember in one of these meetings we had, I think it was one of these meetings, it may have been a private one. I apologize to anyone who gets confused. We talked about the idea of making the writer implement the same interface as the cache. I.e., it has a putIfAbsent, it has the 2arg replace, it has a 3arg replace, it has a 2arg remove, it has a put, it has a remove, and so on and so on and so on. And it literally, you have this. Basically, it's saying, well, why would we have a if the cache is to act like a transparent caching proxy? Why would we have a disconnect or an impedance mismatch between the writer interface and the cache interface? There's already presumably some kind of disconnect, impedance mismatch between the system of record and the writer interface, but the user's going to have to figure it out. Like, obviously, if it's, say it's a SQL database. So why do we impose one on ourselves when we don't need to? So that's one thing that we thought about in the past, and we have. You can see it's sort of made that. It's halfway to get into that state from where 107 is. The other thing that we've talked about is why are writer and reader independent interfaces? Because obviously, if writer and reader are the same interface, these two different forms become kind of irrelevant, because one is just expanded out pseudocode for the other. With the current separation of the two, you get some really interesting effects if reader and writer actually talk to different system of records, which seems insane, but is currently feasible. Now, of course, I guess if you have one combined interface, you can make your read methods and your write methods, but
go to different sources. Yeah.
This seems much more natural if you accept that what you really want. If you believe that what 107 really wants is a putIfAbsent on the system of record with a caching proxy in the way, then it seems like this is the ideal scenario. Let's allow the cache. Let's assume the cache is in sync and allow the cache to veto the putIfAbsent because it says, I think that I've got something cached, therefore I'm going to say the system of record has a value here because I'm assuming I'm in sync. And then when it's let the mutation go through, let the authority be an authority at that point. So I like this.
You don't want to put SOAR value there. You want to put new value in the cache there. But
no. Well,
you want it to be in sync at that point after this is done, right?
This isn't. Well, okay, yes. Sorry. What it should do is it should say if SOAR value equal to null, put new value. Else sort value.
Then you're
If the putIfAbsent fails, the writer is going to tell me what it's got. So there's no harm in me caching it. Now you're right. This is all that doesn't have to be done. Neither does that. You don't have to populate the cache. You know the cache is empty.
As long. Oh yeah, that's right. At that point.
It's all just performance optimization.
That
one makes sense. This one is a debatable question. It depends on what you consider your hotness in your cache to be tied to. If it's tied to values, you don't do this. If it's tied to keys, you do this. To me, it should do that because the common pattern is I want to populate a one-to-one mapping lazily. If somebody's already raced, then I'm going to throw away the new value and I want to use the system record value. So to me, I think the cache there makes sense. But it doesn't functionally affect the way things behave. And then it's all down to a question of interpretation of the spec. I wish it would be nice if Tim Eck was here. I don't believe he's available at the moment, because he's currently working on this stuff and on interacting with the TCK most closely. Oh, we've already burnt half an hour on this very short but very long topic. So I think that it feels to me like what needs to happen from here is we need to create a... I don't think it matters too much what we stick out with the alpha. I don't think enough people are going to be using putIfAbsent with... Given it's an alpha, and given that enough people are going to be using this, not very many people are going to be using putIfAbsent with cache writers, and we also believe that it doesn't make a huge difference. I think it's vital that this is fixed before the alpha, but it would be nice to get it fixed, and I think the current situation is not sensible because of this broken return. Well, not this broken, but because of the broken return we currently have that makes the contract. Well, it makes the method borderline useless. Like the canonical example of the maintaining a lazily populating a mapping doesn't work because you can't get the mapping without having to do a subsequent get later. And the danger is that people would assume that if they see the null, that their new value got installed. I do not have anything else to discuss unless anyone has any dissenting opinions or anything to add. This extrapolates to the other methods. I am going to... Let me make a strong... I think that this alone, this argument, is a strong argument for expanding the writer interface to basically include all the mutative methods that are on cache. So all the putIfAbsent replaces, the removes, etc., etc. Once those methods exist, these operations become a lot more simple, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, but those are tasks for the beta, I would say.
I think that I believe they're tasks to the beta. I think that I don't think it serves a useful purpose to delay the alpha trying to get this stuff right. Because the vast majority of people are only interested in putting get.
Agreed.
And it would be good to get feedback. And as long as we've identified it's a problem, then it would, to a certain extent, it would actually be interesting to push this to the public and find out if anyone notices. If somebody notices and complains, then we feel vindicated in thinking it's bad. And if nobody complains, it's probably because nobody used it, or because nobody's smart enough to use it. Yeah, you've got to get my Facebook notifications now.
Or people genuinely don't care. It's good enough.
Well, if people genuinely don't care, we can delete the method. Or leave it implemented 107's way and not worry about it. The only thing that we have to worry about here is if the TCK is written in such a way that the method is the implementation we want to go to will not pass.
Tim will be able to tell us a lot more about that very soon.
Yes, and I think if that's the case, there are potentially ways of getting around it.
Yeah, it shouldn't be too much of an issue.
I mean, it won't be nice, but it'll be doable. We could even think about emulating the 107 stuff using what are those things called? The closure injection entry processor stuff. I think, maybe. It's a bit weird still. Cool. Does anybody else have anything to bring up?
Not here.
I will be writing this up in as much detail as I can muster. And I'll stop sharing so you can all see my face again. I will write this up in as much detail as I can manage, and put an issue on GitHub, and I'll put it in for the OSS beta, and I will talk about putIfAbsent, but I'll draw the allusion to. I will allude to the fact that I don't want to go into the details on every single method because it'll just make the issue enormous. I think all I'll do is basically say there are equivalent problems in the other methods, because I think that once we move to expanding the writer's set of methods, I think that some of that stuff will fall out naturally. Cool. I don't think there's anything else to talk about, unless anyone has anything to bring up, any business, anything they want to confess to the world.
We canceling the meeting for next week?
Oh, I can certainly say that I won't be there because it's Thanksgiving. I'll be in a restaurant somewhere. Well, actually, this time I probably won't be. I'll probably be driving to a restaurant somewhere. I will not say it's cancelled because Louis will be working.
Okay.
And Alex will be in all likelihood working, and Ludovic and Anthony will both be working. Okay. I assume. Well, Anthony will be working, but not here.
Yep.
Well, he might be in the meeting though. I don't know. That's his business. So I will not say it's cancelled, but obviously attendance is not required. And we'll leave it up to Alex to decide how many people he can get and whether there's agenda. Cool. Well, thank you for listening to me give a treatise on this stuff, and thanks for opinions. I don't know why I end up talking about it.
Clarifies a lot.
Yeah, I think it helped. I think it just helped to air it all out. It was a good positive plan exercise. Cool. Thank you, everybody. And I guess this goes up to YouTube soon. We'll see if I can not drop the ball on that. Signing off.